One thing that I forgot to comment on at the end of the last video was that I cut my hair. As I'm sure most of you can tell, it is pretty short, and it's not normal for me. It feels a little bit strange, but also feels nice. So, anyways, let's get into it. So, for the first information element, let's start with introverted intuition. And why do I pick that one? Well, because I've got a lot of people who've valued my MBTI introverted intuition descriptions. Um, and I want to get into the Socionics information introverted intuition description. So, as well as the fact that it's my base element or my worldview, uh, my primary leading position. So I'm trying to translate this over for people in MBTI, but yeah. So for introverted intuition is abstract information to start, right? Um, Both extroverted intuition and introverted intuition is what I call abstract information. I think that intuition doesn't really um, do it like service. The description, especially for new people coming into typology, I think it would be best to keep it um, abstract rather than intuition, just so that people actually can refer to something and be like, oh, I know what that is. Whereas intuition, I think, can often be associated with a gut feeling, which definitely isn't what it is in this case. So, um, anyways, sorry, I had a notification. So, anyways, for introverted intuition, first of all, it's abstract information, but second of all, for the extroverted and introverted elements, the difference between these is whether or not they're expanding or refining. Okay, so for extroverted elements like NE, TE, SE, FE, those are all expanding, whereas SI, TI, FI, NI are all refining. Um, so first, for introverted intuition, the way this appears when refining is what I call convergence. So um, with introverted intuition, you're going to have it, it's going to be connected to two different things. One, extroverted sensing, and two, extrovert intuition. So what do I mean by that? Well, if you take the perception elements, um, introverted intuition, extrovert intuition, uh, introverted sensing, extroverted sensing, those are all connected in a square of sorts, right? You have the two poles, and then you have their opposite orientations, which is its own pole. So that's something really important to notice, because when you explain an information element, depending on where it is in a person's personality, it's going to get a little bit more or less influence from the other elements, right? So for introverted intuition, that's going to be the two primary elements that you're going to be dealing with are extroverted intuition and extroverted sensing. Introverted sensation as well, but I primarily want to talk about these two. So with extroverted intuition, it's going to be a little bit different from introverted intuition, which is abstract information but converging. So it's convergence, abstract convergence, whereas extroverted intuition is abstract, what I call divergence. So the difference between these two, um, you know, some people may be confused if you've heard a little bit about socionics so far. You may say, well, why is it that you call it divergence? Why is it you call it convergence? I've never heard this before. And the simple answer to that is that it took me a while to notice this, but that is essentially what's happening at the base of the element. Whereas we have chosen words to we've essentially latched on to words that explain how that information arises typically. So I'll give you an example, right? We call NI, or introvert intuition, we call it telos, or purpose and meaning, and time. So these are some different words that we use for introvert intuition, and I think the reason that this is the case is because of how it presents itself um, in several instances. So for one being that introvert intuition presents itself um, as people looking off into the future, as people having an idea of what it is they want to accomplish or a clear vision of the future. And that's something that you will see with introverted intuitive types. And other people say, well, no, the focus is more so on purpose, the purpose of something, or one's purpose, or giving life meaning. And while this is also true about introverted intuition, the things that bring these two together is convergence. So essentially, when you look at time as an example, time is what you would call a convergence point because all things move in time, right? So when we examine introvert intuition, that's one way that we can see convergence happening is through the lens of time. So that is one thing. However, that's not the only way this happens. So another way this happens is introvert intuitive types tend to converge information. So what do I mean by that? Well, typically, when you're studying or you're looking into different topics um, or interests, extrovert intuition, what it tends to do is it tends to explore the ideas and move in an outwards direction in a way. Um, Whereas with introvert intuition, it's more so about being interested in the ideas only so far as it connects to everything else, right? So, um, whereas extrovert intuition will probably have a wide variety of interests, introverted intuition is more so focused on the convergence point of all these different ideas and how they all come together. So typically, these types tend to be philosophically minded. Um, they tend to look at the world in a way where it's one whole or one holistic view of the world. So that's something you'll see with introverted intuition, at least especially in the IEI, because as far as like what types are philosophical, um, because they value introverted logic. But we'll go into that later on. So that's something that I think that's a good example of how introverted intuition converges with ideas. So several disparate ideas coming together, which is extroverted intuition moving towards introverted intuition. However, another way that introverted intuition converges is also in the realm of objects or in the physical world. So, you know, this is why it has a lot to do with time. It's because we're looking at how several objects will converge over the course of time. And so that's another reason why introverted intuition is called time. Um, Whereas in reality, we're looking at the convergence of abstract information. So I think that's a good summary on what introverted intuition is doing. Um, it might be good to move to extrovert intuition just to emphasize it a little bit more. So one way I want to start talking about this is by having someone imagine a color wheel. Um, so in a color wheel, you'll see the center, which is white, and then you'll see all the other colors surrounding that. So if Ni is the white center that where all the colors converge, NE would be exploring the dynamic range and sense of color on the color wheel. So what do I mean by that? Well, essentially, extrovert intuition, rather than being interested in bringing several ideas into a holistic center, it's more so exploring the nuances of an individual idea, right? So with with extroverted intuition, it's more so about these ideas branching out to disparate, independent ideas, and breaking them apart and looking at them from different angles, etc. So it's more about exploring those ideas. Any is also called potential. That's a pretty important aspect of it as well. So typically with extrovert intuition, because it's moving in that divergent manner, the understanding of how much potential something has is kind of like an understanding of in how many ways it can branch out, right? That would be a high amount of potential, which is another word that we use to describe extrovert intuition. So another one that we have is ideas or perspectives, right? These are also pretty good, which is just essentially it would probably be doing NI a disservice to call it ideas, because NI is not about exploring ideas, it's about the idea. It's about how these things come together. And that's the focus or the direction that NI moves in, whereas NE is opposite to that and is more interested in exploring the individual nuances of an idea, how one thing can shatter into a million things, and um, all of the exploratory aspects of that as well. You know, exploring all of the potentials of something, or the divergent nature of an idea, and that would be a pretty good depiction of extroverted intuition, or what I call abstract divergence. So it's pretty fascinating to see the elements in this light. I find both extremely interesting, and in a lot of ways, I could say that it would be helpful if I if I could, for my NI, if I could explore things with a little bit more uh, focus on keeping it as its own independent idea. But it's so difficult. My focus is so much on bringing things together that sometimes I want to explore something as its own idea, disparate from anything else, and it's very difficult for me to do. So, um, yeah, so that's the primary. That's my first information element video. I was hoping to explore introverted intuition and extroverted intuition, and their one's expanding, one's refining. Obviously, the extrovert intuition is expanding, whereas the introverted intuition is refining. So, yeah, that should be the end of this video. I will probably put a link in the description below with a document of mine, or link to a article that I wrote. Either one. I'm not sure when I'll release this video. But yeah, that article will be um, whenever I post it, will be information regarding the information elements, and you'll be able to listen to what I'm saying as well as read through the document. So that's my first video. My next video should be extroverted sensation and introverted sensation. So looking forward to that. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.